What is up, everybody? Welcome into another live edition of Speedway Soccer. I am Davey Shepard here tonight with Ben Wright, with Lucas Panzica. Look, we got a great show tonight. We got an interview with Alex Muyl. We got an interview with Jason Longshore, so it's absolutely packed. But most of all, we're here to hang out with you. So if you've got questions, you've got thoughts, throw them in the chat, tweet them at us. We'll make sure we get to them. Andy Simmons on the producing ones and twos. He'll make sure we get those questions ASAP. So if you got them, holler at us. We'd love to answer them. Love to talk to you tonight. Guys, great time this weekend. Great time at Austin FC. I know we had a heck of a time. Ben, you were up in the box. We're going to get to a little more recap after the Muyl interview. But Lucas, we were down there in the stands. Just absolutely killer time with everybody there that night, right?
Yeah, great atmosphere, and I think the atmosphere is only going to improve, right, as the season goes along and more people start to get worked into Nissan Stadium. The capacity was listed at, I think, 22,000. I think that's only going to go up as we move on in the campaign. So it was a good time, man, a good atmosphere in a game that was frustrating at times, but you got the 3 points at home.
That's exactly right. Ben, what did the crowd look like from your kind of higher up view in the box there?
I mean, it was the best crowd since, February 29th, 2020? I mean,
yeah, exactly, right?
The upper bowl wasn't as full as it has been in the past couple of games, but I think that just kind of, I mean, the lower bowl was packed. I mean, and it was obviously a bigger crowd than it had been at any point up until now. I mean, the atmosphere was the best it's been. I mean, I can barely even hear through the glass in the Nissan Stadium press box, but I mean, even from in there, you could just tell how loud the place was. Yeah, the crowd was awesome. I mean, it's the best I've seen in over a year. So yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, great time. Just to everybody who came and said what's up. We saw a lot of people at the tailgates. Sloop, is that piece coming out today or tomorrow, Ben?
Tomorrow.
Sloop's got a great piece coming out, just kind of talking about the backline tailgates and the experience we all had that day. So make sure you check that piece out. But we had a wonderful time. It was a killer environment. And like you said, Lucas, a good result, not the best result. And you said you think the atmosphere is going to be better. I think a thing that would guarantee the atmosphere being better would be more goals being scored and more chances being taken. We're going to get to that here in a little bit. But first, before we go any further, I want to, have a little bit of funeral for Manchester United's season. Comes to a close today. No trophies. Well, no,
Ben,
listen.
Would you like to few words?
I mean, De Gea can't do everything. I guess
no,
we're finally realizing he's only human.
Ruley can.
You tweeted it out, Lucas. Like one of the best things in sports, penalty shootouts, just the excitement that comes along with them. And I
disagree. I absolutely hate penalty shootouts.
Oh, I don't mind them one bit.
I think it's the worst possible way to end a game. It's yeah. I don't know. I don't know how much you want to go into this, but yeah, I think it's a terrible way to end
we got a minute. We got a few minutes. Let's go into it.
It's not soccer. It's like if you're in an overtime in a baseball game and you just go to a home run derby, or in a basketball game you just go to a free throw competition, or a football game you just decide to kick field goals. It's not remotely related to the game.
But what's your answer?
I would say this if United won too, because I've just always hated penalty shootouts.
But you think it should just be golden goal and just be over?
I mean, I would tack on another period of golden goal,
just
like maybe
just
do
like
the 250,
just like hockey does in the playoffs. Keep tacking on periods.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how feasible it is, and it's probably the only way to end, because at some point you have to end it. I just think it's a pretty crappy way to end it.
In a final, it makes sense to me. In a final, I get that argument, but in a knockout tournament where Bucket is in the house, I hate David De Gea. Bucket, listen, I said this in the chat earlier, Bucket. I said, is it weird that I wanted Fred to score because Bucket on Twitter hates him so much, and I don't want him to be the guy who misses the penalty. So I at least was rooting for you in that one individual moment, Bucket. Look, I get it in the final, Ben. Go ahead, Lucas. Go ahead.
I think it's the most beautiful thing about soccer. I know, and I get it, and I understand your frustration, Ben. But my favorite memories, all my favorite soccer memories, whether it's growing up, modern day, have come in penalty shootouts, and almost all that is in international competition. When I think to the 2006 World Cup against France, I don't know, it's something about the tension of a penalty shootout. It's just it's so indescribable to other sports. And I'm a big hockey guy. Y'all know this. I'm taking a break right now from Prev's coverage. A hockey shootout doesn't do it like a soccer shootout does. It's something about that walk from midfield, about the keeper exchanging with the shooter, about the kind of the exchange of what's the word I'm looking for? That's escaping me. Just the analytic battle, the psychology between keeper and shooter. I think it's incredible. It's my favorite thing about the sport.
I mean, I get it. Like the drama is, it's obviously incredible. And that shootout was fantastic. I mean, I don't think I can think of a shootout with 22 better taken penalties. I mean, 21 better taken penalties.
I mean, you can't ask guys to play another 90 minutes. Like, what if they just don't score?
And I think I'm probably being idealistic because at some point you have to figure out a way to end the game. It's just frustrating because it's the winner of a penalty shootout is not necessarily the better team. Like it's a completely different contest. It's not. It's completely unrelated from the actual game that you're seeing.
But I think that argument extrapolates. The winner of a knockout tournament isn't necessarily the better team.
Yeah,
if Chelsea goes on to win the Champions League final, they're not the best team.
That's not the same thing, though. I mean, sure.
I don't know.
No, because you can. Yeah, I don't know how long Andy's telling us. We only have 2 minutes.
Andy's trying to move us along here.
Look, United couldn't finish more than one chance, and it was a rebound.
Sure, I mean, no, it's
the box
on them, and
Cavani.
United keep losing in finals, so I mean that's
it gives teams like Villarreal a lifeline to win competitions like Europa League. That's why I love it. And like Bucket said, that shootout was incredible.
Unbelievable.
Incredible.
It absolutely was.
I was smiling the whole time, and I'm not even a fan of either team.
No, of either team. It was great. And like you said, I think it's a credit to Villarreal's season, and it doesn't mean the same thing to United that it does Villarreal. And so I think whether it's Sevilla, who's won those few in a row, or Villarreal, credit to Emery as well. That guy kind of gets out the door at Arsenal last year, goes and gets a European trophy. I don't know. I think Arsenal still made the right decision there. Another thing, hey, we talked a lot about the Super League a few weeks ago. Another credit to UEFA that they've got something pretty good going with these tournaments. That was a great final today.
It was.
Yeah, and I think maybe I just have a bad experience with penalties, as we all know.
Sure.
But yeah, I just yeah. Okay, I'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. Listen, guys. Hey, listen, we know what you're tuning in for to start here. Interview with Alex Muyl. Ben and I were able to sit down with him earlier. Really great conversation. We're going to go into that right now. We'll be back after that to kind of break down and recap a little bit of the Austin game. And then later on, we've got Jason Longshore. He's going to be on the call for Atlanta United this weekend. Probably the best resource out there for Atlanta United. Make sure you stick around for that too. Alex Muyl's up next. We'll be back here in just about 15 minutes for live chat on Austin FC. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening again to this episode of Speedway Soccer. Davey Shepard here. I am with Ben Wright, and we're thrilled to be joined today by Alex Muyl, midfielder for Nashville Soccer Club. You guys probably know him as the hardest working guy on the field. Alex, thanks so much for joining us today, buddy.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We're thrilled to do it, man. So, good start to the season here. Undefeated. That was like the topic in the Nashville news the last few days. What is the true meaning of undefeated? I don't know if you caught that on 104.5 The Zone or not. No, it was just hilarious. But 4 draws and 2 wins, yes, is undefeated, and it's a very good accomplishment 6 games into the season. So we're thrilled for that. I'm sure you guys are as well. Alex, the first thing I want to ask, it seems like I always say all the time, I think you're like the prototypical Gary Smith player. What's it like to play under Gary? Have you enjoyed it? Do you think it fits your game well? Or do you think it's just one of those things that maybe looks like a narrative from the outside that isn't actually there?
No, I mean, I enjoy playing for him a lot. I think I didn't really know much about him before I got traded down here. And then when I came down here, I spoke to Dax first, and really the way he summed him up is great, is that he really knows what he wants. He's very clear about what he wants. He's the kind of guy who's very straight up with you, and he's really not going to beat around the bush. And I think as a player, that's really all you can ask for, is someone who knows what they want and who's able to get that information across to you, so that really if you're doing the job, you're going to play, and if you're not doing the job, you're going to know it and know what you have to do differently. So yeah, I enjoy that a lot, and I think I think he's from last season to this season, he's kind of adapting the way he's coaching as well, and we're kind of adapting the way we're playing. So I think it's been a great experience overall.
Alex, what was the transition like from New York to Nashville? I mean, obviously coming through the New York system and growing up in that area, and then moving to a new city. Not just that, but like in the middle of a pandemic and everything. What was that transition like, and how did you handle it?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was definitely, it was sudden when it happened. I'd never been traded before, obviously, in my career, and it was just crazy how quickly things happened, especially because at that point there was like a 10-day quarantine rule. So they wanted me to come down and meet as soon as I possibly could so that the quarantine period could start and I could get involved. So I got told, and then the next day I was on a plane. Wow. And obviously, yeah, in the pandemic, that was like my first time on a really like traveling. I mean, we had traveled with in charters to go to Orlando as with Red Bull, but that was my first time like on a plane. It was just a lot of new experiences, especially during a pandemic. So it was intense. But for me, the main thing was, I left somewhere where, I had some great memories and some great times, and I love everyone there. But I think my time had come to an end there, and I was coming somewhere where I was wanted and where I was valued. And so for me, it made that transition like so much easier. And then my girlfriend came down, which was awesome. Felt like a little bit of home here, and I just haven't looked back.
So you talked about on the field and the quarantine and flying and all of that stuff. What's it been like getting to know the city of Nashville? I mean, it seemed kind of stuff's coming back to life now. I feel like everybody, even Hani and some of those guys who were there from the very beginning, they're just now really getting to see what Nashville's like all the way about. How's that been, kind of seeing what it's like?
Yeah, I'm just probably starting to get into it a little. I've done like a lot of like more outdoor nature type things. So we go to like Lake Radnor a decent amount.
Oh yeah.
We did Percy Warner Park, which is great. The Botanical Gardens, super cool. But we still haven't seen any live music, so we got to do that. That's definitely on our list. And I think we're starting to feel more comfortable to do that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But besides that, if you guys have any recommendations, I'm definitely open.
We'll have to get the listeners to tweet them out here after the show. We'll get them to throw up some restaurant recommendations, their favorite live venues, all of that kind of stuff.
I love to eat. That's what we do. We just eat.
There we go. That's what we'll do. We'll get them to toss you some restaurant recommendations after that. Alex, so again, a solid team this year. I think everybody last year said, hey, this team is kind of built to survive in year one, right? Like they're going to stay in games. They're hard to break down, all of that stuff. Seems like the transition's kind of starting from just a team that's hard to beat or annoying to play against to like a really good soccer team. And with that it seems like the chance creation is up. Is that like a philosophical change that Gary's made from last season into this season? Or do you think it's really just been situational in the games you guys have had so far?
I do think that there's been more emphasis on the going forward part. I think especially in preseason. And I think part of that is because we knew that we kind of, not that we can ever take it for granted, but we have that, the defensive, the sitting in part of the game. We know how to do that. So this preseason, we were able to spend a lot more time on the other side of things. And I think you're seeing that translate. But I think also you saw it at the end of last season as well. I think once the team really started to get a good number of games together and have a good understanding, there was more chances and we created a lot more. And I think hopefully that's going to continue to happen this year. But, I think that we have a lot of really good attacking players. And for me, even last year when we weren't scoring sometimes, I really felt like it wasn't necessarily something that really worried me because I knew that we were gonna figure it out, and we had enough quality, and especially with guys like with Walker and Dave and other in the service we have on set pieces. Even if we don't create, we're gonna get chances. So I'm not too worried about that part of things.
Alex, I know the preseason this year was just strange. I mean, it feels like this whole last year has been strange, but especially in preseason, not getting to play really any games leading into the season. But Gary and Mike Jacobs have been talking about how much emphasis they wanted to place, kind of like you said, just continuing the form that you guys finished out last year with. How was that kind of jumping into the season without having really got to test yourselves in preseason? Yeah,
that was tough, and I don't like to talk about it too much because I don't want to make excuses or anything. But sure. I do think that you saw that, especially in the way that we started the first two games, giving first half just not up to pace. There's something that you don't get when you play against yourself, and there's something that you don't get when you have meaningful games against MLS opposition. I think we suffered from that, and for us, obviously, it wasn't ideal because we wanted to get as many points from the first few games as possible, but ultimately, it's a long season, and I think we're getting there now. Now we're 6 games in. Other teams are probably 12 games in at this point, 13 games in. We're 6 games in, and I think we're starting to really hit our stride, and hopefully we can continue with that form. But, Yeah, very frustrating preseason, especially for me too, because this was my first preseason with the team, and I was really excited to just get like an entire full preseason in.
Big one coming up against Atlanta this weekend. Somewhat of a rivalry game. I think it's one that everybody thinks kind of will eventually become that. Really tight contested games last year against Atlanta. Do you guys feel like it's a rivalry game inside the club?
Well, me personally, coming from Red Bull, it kind of feels like one. They were always,
right.
That was always kind of like an intense game. Also, when they see like how much they've invested in their team and how much success they've had early, it just feels like a big game always when you go there. So for me, especially now with the closeness as well of the two cities, it does feel a little bit like a rivalry game. We'll have to build that rivalry. Hopefully, nothing dirty happens, but I'm sure as each team continues to move forward, I'm sure there will be more history and the rivalry will feel bigger and more prevalent.
So, I mean, last Saturday was the first time since last February, really, that it was a pretty full crowd at Nissan. And then you're going to be going to Atlanta. I believe they've had like 40,000 at the past couple of games. Just what's the difference in playing in front of a full crowd, and how do you go into Atlanta and handle kind of a hostile version of that?
I mean, it's great. It was so nice to see our stadium, starting to fill up. Last game, it was amazing, and I'm so glad we were able to reward them with 3 points. But I personally love playing in a hostile environment. I think it's great. I love the energy that the crowd brings, and I love the feeling of kind of having your back against the wall a little bit and playing in front of 40,000 people who just want to see you lose. So I think we have a lot of guys on this team who feel the same way as well, kind of like chip on their shoulder mentality. So I'm super excited. I've had some good success playing in Atlanta, especially in front of like a lot of fans, and I hope that can continue. But for me, also just the larger thing, it feels like a little bit of like life is happening again, life is resuming. So there's a little bit of just like a positivity in it. Even the fans, I feel like they're not going to be as harsh, hopefully, because they're just happy to see live sports and see all this happening again. So we'll see.
A few guys, some of the DPs who have come in, like Hani or Yonder, some of these guys, they're brand new to the country, brand new to the league, still finding their way kind of in MLS, which is, this as well as anybody, super particular place to come play, particularly if you've grown up, in the European environment, like both of those guys have. How do vets like you from the league, like a CJ or a Dax, Anibal, how do you help those guys along the way? I mean, it's just a weird place to kind of get to know. How's that been? And do you feel like that's something you've tried to take on, especially with the forwards?
Yeah, I mean, like when I did get traded, when it was my first time in my career, and I felt how strange it was. And I actually thought, wow, how much weirder would this be if I was coming from a completely different country and like never been in this league before? So as hard as it was for me, it's got to be 10 times harder for these guys. So I'm so impressed with the way that they've done. Both of them have done really well for the team, and both of them are really big pieces for us. So, in terms of helping them along, there's really not much you can do, because it's kind of, obviously you can be patient with them and have give them a lot of support and give them a lot of, your respect. But ultimately, it's going to be about getting those minutes under their belt and just kind of getting the experience and learning the league firsthand. Both those guys are so talented, and we have a lot of guys from overseas who are so talented, and ultimately, their drive and their ability is what's going to help them basically make it work in this league, and they've already done so. So hopefully that can continue, and we're going to need those big salary players further down the line.
Alex, I mean, I know everybody talks about it, just how much ground you cover. I believe it's at the top of the league, if not one of the top. Just what do you see your role in the team? And I mean, honestly, just how do you run that much every week?
I don't know how I do it. It's just some people are super fast and blessed with speed. Some people are blessed with good looks. I can just run a lot, I wish I had some good looks and speed, but I can just run all day. And for me, that's just an easy way to help the team. And it's not something that I have to think about so much. It's kind of just the way I play and the way I enjoy playing. But I think my role, in that sense, I can kind of sacrifice a lot of I can do a lot for the team because I can cover so much ground. I can help other guys to be in good positions because I can, put myself in positions that maybe, they don't want to be in. And ultimately, I don't know, I'm just someone who I think will, I want to win and I want to get better. And so for the team, I'm just someone who's going to do whatever it takes to win and do whatever it takes to improve as myself personally.
Alex, one more on the way out the door. What's like a personal goal you've got for this season? I'm sure you come in and you set them. What's something you're trying to get to stat-wise or appearance-wise, whatever that might be?
I want to definitely try and produce going forward. You know, I've got one goal, but I think I've been in a position to do a little bit better already this year, but, you know, it's early yet. So I want to produce as much as I can stat-wise. And then more, you know, holistically, I want to become someone that is one of the first names on the team sheet and someone that Gary has to think twice before he takes off the field. And then finally, as like a more team thing, I want to be someone that everyone enjoys playing with, and I want to help everyone be better.
Perfect, man. Alex, we are very appreciative of your time, buddy. You know, you don't have to take these things, so we're grateful that you took some time for us. We know the audience out there is going to be thrilled to listen to it. Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was a lot of fun. Let me know when you want me to come back.
Absolutely, buddy. Alex Muyl has been the guest. We're thrilled to have him. Speedway Soccer. We'll be right back. Thanks so much. Alex Muyl, great listen, insightful guy. You brought it up, Ben. The amount of ground that guy covers is just insane, leading the league in meters per 90 right now, which is just insane. Matt, listening in from Clarksville. Matt, thanks for listening, buddy. We appreciate you chiming in. Guys, anything you caught from the Alex interview that was interesting in particular? Oh, before we forget, listeners, make sure you tweet out your favorite places to eat. Hit Muyl with those. I think you'll be interested to see. My spot, I tried it for the first time the other day. Grange at the Grand Hyatt, out of this world, tremendous meal. Would recommend it highly to anyone, including Alex. I think I told him that off air earlier. Before we get into Austin, guys, anything in particular you liked from that interview?
I mean, you mentioned this, but he just does seem like a guy who fits what Mike Jacobs and Gary Smith have called like the Nashville DNA. Just super hardworking, like intelligent player who like just fits in well with teammates. I think he's already a fan favorite, and I think it's easy to see why. And yeah, I mean, I think he was good last year, but even to start this year, I think he's been even better. Obviously got the goal out of the way, but I think you're definitely starting to see more production in the final third from him, and I think that's huge.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, like you can make a strong case that nobody fits that Gary Smith DNA like Alex Muyl, right? And he was kind of a mid-season addition last year. Like he said in the interview, this is his first preseason with the team. Another thing I thought was interesting from what he said that really kind of backed up everything we were saying in the early onset, how evident it was that this was a team that did not go through a preseason. He kind of validated all of that. But I think that's interesting how this team got a little bit into its inaugural MLS season and then added a piece that, like you said, fits that DNA and that identity arguably more than any other player on the roster.
I mean, and they really played 2 games before they signed Muyl because he didn't. I mean, the whole MLS is back thing happened, but then I mean they signed him before that FC Dallas match,
right?
So I mean, it didn't take them long to figure out that they needed a guy like him, and I think you can see why.
And remind me, Ben, do you remember off the top of your head what went back the other way? Was it like 200,000 in GAM or something like that?
It was around that and an international spot for last year, which I think they'll get back at the summer window, I believe.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, great business for a guy who is so integral to the team. You can't really beat it for what he does, other than maybe the Dave Romney deal, which we all agree, I think everyone in the world agrees, was highway robbery.
I think that's one of the best deals in recent memory.
Absolutely. Guys, a little bit of Austin breakdown. We talked about it earlier, Lucas, on Nashville Soccer Show. 1-0 victory against Austin FC. We said in both episodes last week of Nashville Soccer Show, Speedway Soccer, this is one where, hey, look, they're a team that Nashville is better than. You need to go out and get all 3 points. The club does that. Was it necessarily the way you would have liked to have seen that result come about, Lucas?
Not quite. The important thing is they got the 3 points. But listen, and I don't want to play the hypothetical game, but Randall Leal scores on a gorgeous cross from Yonder Cadiz. He scuffs the finish a little bit, probably didn't exactly get what he wants. I thought an atrocious piece of goalkeeping from Stuver, who slipped a little bit, and the ball almost in slow motion crept over his head and into the net. So you get that first goal. And then you think it's tied up 1-1, I think in the 81st minute when Austin FC has a goal that's called back. I felt Nashville got a little too comfortable letting Austin have all the possession, and that's something we expected going in, but I thought Nashville got comfortable in that setting. And when that happens, you kind of, surrender yourself to the ball being batted around in the box, it bouncing a different way and going into the back of the net. And that's okay if you can finish chances like Don Badji had, like Hani Mukhtar had late in the game. And look, the Don Badji miss, it's a really bad miss. It's one of the worst misses that we've seen from this club in the past couple of seasons. The issue has always been, I think last year, the issue earlier on especially was the inability to really create those chances and then finish. And now they're creating the chances. They're just not finishing. As Gary Smith said, I wish we could make life easier on ourselves. Don Badji has to at least make Stuver make a better effort to make that save. He made life way too easy on Austin FC's goalkeeper. So I know I'm really honing in on that one chance, but it's the type of chance that this team just cannot afford to squander with all we talk about with the struggles finishing. So it's all 3 points, but look, it should have been 2. It should have been 3. It should have been 4. For a team that's leading the league in expected goals, the finishing issues are just so abundant, and it's hard to argue against that.
And this isn't like a Badji bash fest, right? We're saying that's an example of what we've seen throughout the course of the season. And you said it, leading the league in expected goals. The finishing issue isn't just on one player. It's systemic right now. And so it's easy to go and pop in on that, but it's happening kind of across the lineup. The one guy who's really cut through the mix has been Randall Leal, who gets on the clean sheet or the score sheet again. Remarkable performance from him to start the season so far. Ben, your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I had a piece up on Broadway Sports earlier this week, kind of breaking it down and just going through with a couple examples of just bad finishing. And I think on one hand, you don't want to criticize too much, right? Because this team is one of 3 teams in MLS that has yet to lose a game. And I think in a lot of ways, they're exceeding expectations. And I think like the pros vastly outweigh the cons at this point. But at the end of the day, I mean, they're creating chances and they're not finishing them. And they haven't played teams other than maybe New England who will punish them for that. But they're about to start playing. I mean, Atlanta is a team that will punish you if you don't finish those chances. New York Red Bulls is a team that will punish you if you don't finish that. Toronto, they have a rough run of games here against teams who, if Nashville misses 3 or 4 chances like they did against Austin, it's going to result in dropped points. I think they were lucky that it didn't cost them points against Austin. And I think for me, that's really the next step that Nashville takes. I think the hard part is creating chances. And we've seen that pretty consistently from them this season. They've created chances in basically every match that they've played. And now you just have to take that one next step and start finishing them consistently. And I think just not even like the best finishing in MLS, but just slight improvement in front of goal, I think will take them from a pretty decent team who's probably going to finish in like the 7 to 5 range to a team that can compete for a top 4 spot in the East.
Lucas, you had one more thought there? Perhaps we've lost Lucas temporarily. Oh, as soon as his connection improves. You back?
I'm back.
We've got it. That's okay.
Look, yeah, and I just wanted to add to that. I get a little bit frustrated when we continue to hear in the discussion that basically, well, the finishing will come. The finishing will come. The chances are being created. The finishing and the goals will come. And look, it's hard to argue that when you're consistently proving that you don't have players that can finish on a consistent basis. Leading the league in XG, bottom half of the league in actual goals scored per game. I understand it's a relatively small sample size, but that was our argument after games 1 and 2, right? And really,
sure,
where Nashville had its best offensive performances, scoring 2 goals in each of those games, in abundance of 50 shots on goal, or not on goal, but 50 shots in those 2 games. And it was, well, the finishing will come. The finishing is not just going to come when you have players that have yet to prove they can consistently put the ball in the back of the net. There's no argument. That's what this team needs the most right now. So I am not content to sit back and just say, because the chances are being created, the attacking woes will be figured out. I'm not prepared to say that.
I think that's fair. Another note on Don Badji, the guy, he just hasn't played enough. He was hurt towards the end of last season. He works his way back from injury. He gets in the lineup, finally starting to see minutes again. The movement's been good. Finishing touch is not back yet. Speaking of finishing, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, one thing on Badji, the one thing I will say is there aren't a ton of players on Nashville's roster, at least strikers who get in behind the defense
who
like
have
that
the
on that
speed.
chance.
Agreed completely. I don't think there's anyone. I mean, maybe Cadiz does that gets away that cleanly. Agreed completely. I don't think anyone other than he does.
Well, that's fine, but what does that get you if Don Badji can't finish the chance he was given against Austin? I mean, what does that give you besides pure speed?
Right.
No, I think that's a fair point. I'm just I'm trying to look for positives, which maybe we don't need to right now.
OG Speedway Soccer fan, maybe the original Speedway Soccer, maybe the only Speedway Soccer fan. Dick Strong chimes in. Given that Rios hasn't played a minute, do you think he sees the field at all against Atlanta United? Ben, I think you've got a thought there.
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like he's pretty close, right? I mean, he's in training last week, and Gary said in his pregame press conference that he just basically hadn't been in training enough to be available against Austin. We'll talk to Gary tomorrow in their pre-match press conference, but I would kind of lean towards, so the international break is coming up right after Atlanta. And I feel like, especially with attackers, Nashville has just been pretty careful with injuries. So I kind of lean towards Nashville holding him out against Atlanta and just giving him that extra week off to fully recover, and then maybe seeing him when they come back from international break against New York.
All right, guys, we're going to hop right into the interview now with Jason Longshore. A little bit of breakdown on Atlanta United, his thoughts on the match coming up, his thoughts on Nashville and Atlanta in general. Really good listen. Make sure you stay tuned. We'll be back on the other side to chat about the upcoming match against Atlanta United. We'll get to the rest of your questions then. Stay tuned. This is Speedway Soccer. Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Speedway Soccer. Davey Shepard and Ben here, right? Interviewing Jason Longshore at Longshoe on Twitter. If you've ever kept up even tangentially with Atlanta United, he is the guy who you have probably seen on Twitter talking about it. Jason, thanks so much for joining us, buddy.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. This is, I think, our third or fourth, maybe fifth time doing this, so we're always grateful for the time. And look, let's get right into it. Atlanta United coming off, I would say, by their accounts and all accounts, a pretty disappointing season. What's it been like so far this year? How are they building back? And what's the story been so far?
It's been exciting to watch the process of Gabriel Heinze play out. The manager coming in from Vélez Sarsfield in Argentina, I'm sure a lot of people know his career as a player, but he's early days in a managerial career, and it's going to be really interesting because of his influences. You know, this is a guy who played for Sir Alex Ferguson. He played for Marcelo Bielsa. He, played for Luis Enrique. He's a guy who's got a lot of different, elements in the way he sees the game, along with just the passion that he has within himself. So, it's a process. He called it a project when he came in. I think a lot of people took that, in the way that we talk about it in the U.S. as, oh, no, it's a rebuild.
Right.
Project, I think the way that I've always seen it, used in Latin America is a manager comes in with a very thoughtful philosophy and a way of playing that doesn't happen overnight. And it's not happening overnight for Atlanta United yet. But I think the building blocks of the way that they want to play are starting to come together. The final third is still the missing element for Atlanta United, but defensively, they're very good. They're defending away from their own goal, high up the field, getting numbers forward. Some of the different positional tweaks we're starting to see play out in different matches, but the attack is still a little bit behind the rest of the team.
Jason, I mean, not just a new manager, but you've had a couple of new signings come in. I mean, Santiago Sosa seems like the big one, but also guys like Lisandro Lopez, who's not with the team anymore. But Alan Franco was kind of the big name in defense. How have those guys adapted? What's their role been in the team so far, and what do you expect from them going forward?
Yeah, it's been different with different guys. Sosa was one that coming in from River Plate, I think there was a pretty high expectation on him, and he surpassed it. He's a holding midfielder who can play in the back as well. There was a logjam at the position at River Plate, so it was a little surprising for some in South America that River was willing to let him go, and we see why. He's incredibly talented. He's a combination of somebody who can be a metronome in a possession-based team like Atlanta United, but also defend really well, and he can get physical, and he can win the aerial duels. He can give you anything you need as a center back, as a defensive midfielder, and I think even as an 8, as a box-to-box midfielder, depending on what's called upon in that game. He's been outstanding. Alan Franco came in a little bit later, and adding another center back, I think it was obvious it was something that Gabriel Heinze wanted to do. There were a couple of pursuits before Alan Franco became the guy. And Franco was coming in from Independiente, which was not really a possession-based team. So that was going to be a little bit of a process for him to adapt to. He also had to go through a quarantine period, the visa period, a lot of challenges with all of that for Allen. And then he was starting to get into the flow, getting regular minutes, and now he has an ankle injury that took him out of a couple games ago at halftime. He didn't play in Seattle. We don't know his status for the Nashville match just yet. He's a physical center back who's getting better and better on the ball. He provides a really different kind of center back than Miles Robinson and Anton Walks, who have both been really good this year, but Franco gives you a very different kind of option at center back.
Talked a bit about the struggles in the final third. Obviously, Martinez is back this season after the injury suffered in the opener against Nashville last year. How's he been so far? What have you seen? Any differences in his game, or you think it's just growing back into it after the injury?
It's getting back into it. It's getting a rhythm. This is not really all that shocking when you see guys come back from a long-term ACL injury.
Right.
He missed over 12 months, and the rhythm has been the hardest thing for him. I feel like his timing is off at times. One thing a lot of people have talked about is how much he's dropping into midfield to get touches and to be involved in the build-up play. That's been a process that we've seen him, kind of go through since day one here in Atlanta. I think a lot of people think back to 2017 with Joseph Martinez, where we mostly saw him splitting the channel, running between two center backs, getting on the end of through balls. But 2018, as Atlanta became more of a possession team, Joseph dropped a little bit deeper and was getting more touches in the midfield. 2019, that became an even more prominent aspect of his role. So it's not a surprise to see him in those spots. I think the biggest surprise so far, if you've watched Joseph Martinez play a lot during his time with Atlanta, is just the lack of timing on crosses and getting on the end of some of these deliveries from a Brent Lennon or a George Bello. It's one of the hardest things to get back. I think he just kind of has to play through it and keep finding ways to get on the score sheet like he did in Seattle from the penalty spot, and like he did down in Fort Lauderdale against Miami with a brilliant turn and finish.
So, I mean, you just mentioned the Seattle game. I mean, obviously a huge result against what looks like far and away the best team in the league right now. Aside from that, how have results been so far? How has life been under Gabriel Heinze, and has the team kind of lived up to expectations so far?
They have for me. I don't know if they have for everybody, because, studying Heinze's way of playing and his ideas, I knew it was going to take a little bit of time, because, you're going mainly, one of the biggest changes from the Frank de Boer era to the Gabriel Heinze era is how far away from your goal you're defending, and the commitment that it takes to play that way and constantly be in those 1v1 situations defensively. That has actually come faster than I would have thought. But the other element that maybe has caught some by surprise is, alongside of that, Heinze wants his team to have a lot of the ball. Possession is prioritized, and he wants to control games with the ball, not play off of the other opponent and have to react to what they do. So that is something that, I think some of the expectations here were maybe a little bit different than the reality of the way Gabriel Heinze's teams have played in the past at Vélez Sarsfield and at Argentinos Juniors in Argentina. I think they're a little ahead of schedule, honestly, on the defensive side. That came really naturally to this group. The attack, if you had a healthy Joseph Martinez, and maybe better way to put it is a more in rhythm Joseph Martinez. He had a healthy Ezequiel Barco for most of the season. He's been missing for a little while now after picking up a muscle injury in New England. Jürgen Damm, same thing. Those are two very creative players that have been lacking, and I think that's had a little bit to do with the lack of quality chances created on a regular basis.
Jason, one of the things that I like when we're able to sit down and talk is your perspective on Nashville. Obviously, you keep up with all the teams that you guys cover. Nashville being close, I think probably a little bit more of an eye even there. What have you thought about Nashville's start this season? I'd love to give the fans a view from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I'm not too surprised about the way it's gone in the reaction to those first couple of games, where love to see, more numbers getting forward, but that defensive, issue where you're conceding a couple of goals a game in those first few, Gary Smith's not going to be comfortable with that. And I think we've seen an increased commitment to defending first. And look, this is an incredible team defensively. I think, I've always thought Dave Romney is one of the most underrated players in the league. Alistair Johnston turning into one of the better right backs, along with Daniel Lovitz on the other side. We know what Walker Zimmerman brings to the table. And that holding midfield is one of my favorites in the league with Dax McCarty and Anibal Godoy. So that six is really difficult to break down anytime. When a player like Alex Muyl comes into the mix, who's a perfect Gary Smith kind of player, it makes them even more difficult to break down. Now, the element that I've been a little surprised about is that the attack hasn't really come together this year yet on a consistent basis. Randall Leal, incredible year for him so far, but Cadiz hasn't really been the guy. I think we know who CJ Sapong is at this point in his career. He's solid, but is he going to get you 15, 20 goals? Probably not. I would have loved to have seen Pinheiro more at this point and see what he could bring to the table. But I'm not surprised about the trajectory it's gone on. This is going to be a difficult team to beat on a regular basis. I think the next step for Nashville is to be able to not just be difficult to beat, but be beating difficult teams on a regular basis because they can have more of the play. That's going to be the longer process.
So, I mean, Atlanta, I would categorize as one of those more difficult teams to beat. Just matchup on Saturday, how do you see it playing out? Where are some areas that you think Atlanta can cause Nashville trouble? And then on the flip side, what would it take for Nashville to potentially get a result?
I think it's going to be tight. I think both teams are good defensively. I think it'll play, 65, 35, 70, 30 in possession towards Atlanta. And I think Nashville's probably fine with that. From the Atlanta side of it, a lot of it is creating the overloads to get the setups they want going into the final third. At different points, it's been to create space for Brooks Lennon to deliver crosses. He's one of the better ones in the league, delivering crosses from that right side. At other points, it's been to Marcelino Moreno 1v1 isolated against a defender in a matchup they like. And I'll be curious to see if trying to get Moreno 1v1 with Alistair Johnston is a matchup that Gabriel Heinze wants to try to create. I think Atlanta will have the ball, and it's what they do with it will be what it comes down to. And if they can maybe try to exploit the times that Randall Leal and Alex Muyl do get forward, and they're able to hit a little bit faster in those moments where they can create some 2v1s on the outside backs. I think that's also one of the things that Nashville can do to hurt Atlanta is when they do break out, because Atlanta will get numbers forward. They will attack with 6, 7, sometimes 8. And when that happens and the ball turns over, this is where I think Nashville is very, very good. And guys like McCarty and Godoy are a huge problem. If Randall Leal can get out into space, it's something Seattle struggled to do because their wingbacks were the only width they had, and they got pinned deep. It's not so much Lovitz and Johnston getting forward that worry me from Nashville. It's Leal, especially in space behind Atlanta's outside players when they get forward. That's where I think they can cause problems. Set pieces for sure as well. It's something Atlanta struggled with pretty much from day one as a team that wants a lot of the ball, that wants to have possession. They're not the biggest, strongest team in some of those situations. We saw Seattle get the goal over with Raul Ruidiaz, 1v1 with Brooks Lennon on a header. Walker Zimmerman on set pieces terrifies me. So, I think it's those moments that Nashville will have opportunities in this game. I think Atlanta will have a lot more of the ball, and they will have opportunities as well. But these are two really good defensive teams. I don't expect a ton of goals in it.
I said on Monday on Nashville Soccer Show, this one has 0-0 written all over it, and I'm just dreading that. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully it's not that, but we'll see. Jason, probably one of the first times we talked, I think we said, this seems like one that the league really wants to be a rivalry, but the fans necessarily, it's pretty congenial. It's not like Atlanta or Orlando. It doesn't have the Nashville-Cincinnati feel to it. But the results on the field last year felt a little bit different from that. The games got pretty chippy a few times. You had what could have been a red card on Escobar that was, I think, given later after the fact. How do you think these two teams feel on the field? And do you think this becomes that rivalry that MLS wants it to be?
It could happen this weekend. It honestly could happen this weekend because, Gabriel Heinze is a different kind of a figure on the touchline. He will be very animated. He will get under Nashville's skin at times because he'll be very vocal. I don't think Gary Smith will necessarily enjoy that, and that will create friction, and that's a good thing. I have no problem.
Absolutely.
We saw what happened with Heinze and Jim Curtin in CONCACAF Champions League. I think it is a rivalry that will grow as these two teams. I've said it all week. I feel like they're two of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. And when you start competing to win trophies, and I think these teams will be in those positions for a while to come, that's where rivalries can develop. Atlanta, outside of the Orlando one, they've had a rivalry with the Red Bulls when they were meeting in the playoffs, and they've had a rivalry with NYC, who's been near the top of the conference for a long time. I think Atlanta Nashville will be a rivalry that animosity will start to come, and it might really start on Saturday.
Jason Longshore has been the guest. That's at Longshoe on Twitter. Jason, as always, man, we love these sit downs. We're so appreciative of your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, man. We will be back in just a second with more Speedway Soccer. Great sit down there with Jason. That guy, he's one of the best interviews we do every year. Usually we do him 2 or 3 times a year, so we'll certainly have him on later in the season. Just a guy who knows his stuff, absolute pro. They're lucky to have him down there in Atlanta, to be quite frank. We are too, obviously, with guys like Freeman, guys like Wes, guys like Tony and Jamie. So soccer in the South is being covered and covered well. We're lucky to see it. Guys, looking up at the Atlanta match, what do you guys see happening? I said it there myself. To me, I'm just very worried about 0-0 in this match. I don't want to see that again. No one ever likes to see that. Ben, I think coming out of that interview, you said you didn't see it going that way. What are you looking to see happen?
I mean, I don't think 0-0 would be a bad result, right? I mean, Atlanta's a legit side in MLS, and they have been. So, I mean, I think Nashville will go in there, and I think this is one where you're happy with a point. Maybe not 0-0, maybe 1-1. But, I mean, Atlanta's a good defensive side, too, so I don't think it's not going to be a high-scoring game. But, yeah, I mean, this is going to be a tough game for Nashville, and I know that results have been good so far. But, I think at some point you have to – the Real Salt Lake draw was frustrating, but I think this is one where if you come out with a point, you're pretty happy.
Interesting to me to hear Jason. First of all, and that was great from Jason. The way he detailed how Nashville plays, I thought was really interesting from an outside perspective. He did a really good job of it. But fascinated to see how Nashville plays on the counter. What kind of opportunities they're able to get with the numbers that Atlanta is able to push forward. It's a team that, and you guys tell me if you disagree, it's two teams that have, I think, dealt with a lot of the same issues this year. I mean, Atlanta has not scored more than 1 goal in a game since their second game of the season, a 3-1 win against Chicago Fire. And they've obviously been very stout. Gabriel Heinze, former defender himself, by the way, I think the exact kind of personality in a manager that MLS needs more of when it comes to the big names, not just having a big name to have a big name. I love the way Gabriel Heinze coaches, like the way he played. But so I'm interested to see, because something's got to give, right? And Atlanta is the side with a known commodity and consistent goal-scoring threat in Joseph Martinez. Yes, he's still coming off the injury, still just has the 2 goals this season, but something's got to give, and I wonder if it's going to give for Nashville on the counterattack. But I'm with both of you guys that it does have a scoreless draw written all over it, which after all the discussion from this week, however much credit you want to give it, that's certainly not something I want to see, at least not something I want to deal with when I walk into the 104.5 The Zone studios the next day.
Yeah, I bet that would be a ton of fun come Monday morning. Listen, I think you're right. I think the counter is going to be the way forward, but I'm also interested to see, this is maybe the second or third time now this season we've heard, hey, Nashville's not going to have as much of the ball as they've been having. They're not going to have 55, 60% possession. We heard that same thing before Austin. Now, Austin's not the same quality team as Atlanta. I'm interested to see how much Gary. What is the philosophy here? Because Gary's been keeping a lot more of the ball. Is he willing
Austin
to
had almost 60% possession? Austin had almost 60%. Yeah,
I lost track of it, so I thought it was like 52 or something like that. That's my mistake. Sorry, Ben. Thanks for the stat.
Well, no, I mean, I think even going back to USL, Nashville's been okay without the ball. I mean, they don't they're okay. They're good in possession, but they've never been a team who dominates possession. And I think a lot of their better performances have come when they've kind of been on if you want to call it, the losing side of the possession battle. So, I mean, 30% isn't great, but I think they're okay with that, and they're set up to play like that. So, yeah, I don't see it as a huge – if Nashville on Saturday against Atlanta has 30% possession, I don't think it's a huge concern because I think they're totally fine playing against the ball.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I think we've definitely seen that over the course of USL. So far this season, we've definitely had more of the ball, I think, than we've had traditionally, especially in tighter games. Now – at one point late in the first half, Nashville had much more of the ball than that. But if it's, I trust you, obviously, that it finished at 60-40. So I'm just interested to see it. I think Atlanta's good. Like you said, Lucas, I think the difference in between the two teams is Atlanta has the remedy for their goal scoring problems. It is Joseph Martinez. And it's who is it for Nashville? What does that do? And I'm interested to see just kind of the difference in how these two teams go at it. Like you said, Lucas, that have had the same issues. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's one that I think could get pretty chippy. I think that's why I wanted to ask Jason that. It just kind of is screaming for that. And Gary doesn't like a bunch of lip on the sideline there. We saw him and Ben Olsen get into it last year. That I'm really, really looking forward to, honestly, that part just as much as I am the rest of the game.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that can spark this rivalry. I thought another interesting thing Longshore said was this could be the night that this turns into an organic rivalry between two southeastern MLS teams. So I'm sorry, producer Andy, you're not supposed to distract the host while you're producing a show. Just putting obscenities in our chat. But no, I thought it was interesting what he said, that this could be the start of an organic rivalry between these two in Atlanta. The crowd is rocking. This might be the most hostile environment because it will be full capacity, right? They've been full capacity. So this could be the most hostile environment Nashville has been in since Portland, right? In game 2,
absolutely,
a year ago.
Yeah,
that can be jarring. Like when the Titans schedule came out, the first thing I saw was going to Seattle in week 2, the first road trip in front of a full crowd since the AFC Championship. Similar vibes here for Nashville. First time in over a year you're in front of a full capacity crowd, and that's probably, you could argue the best crowd on this side of the Mississippi.
Dick Strong chimes in again. When Grizz run ends, Nashville SC should sign John Moran as a bench coach to teach the philosophy of finishing. Hey, there's not many people better at it than that dude right now. Good God, he's out of this world. Speaking of, guys, I think we got Grizz tip coming up here in just a second.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the Atlanta Hawks fall apart and don't get 2 wins up on the
did
Knicks.
They blow the lead?
They did, yeah. No one wants to see the Knicks win, man. So, well, I guess a few people do, but they're all from New York. So
I was about to say pour one out for Sloot, but I realized it's the wrong Hawks.
The wrong Hawks. Mike Jacobs wants to see the Knicks win. So Mike's a big Knicks guy. So listen, NBA playoffs have been great. It's Wednesday night tonight. Tomorrow night is a Preds game. Tune into the Grizz, tune into the Preds, support the other local teams here. We think it's important. We're all going to be watching it. You know how Lucas has got to talk about all of it tomorrow on the radio anyway. So that's another episode tonight of Speedway Soccer. We're appreciative of you guys for chiming in. Huge thanks to Alex Muyl, Jason Longshore for hanging out with us, bringing us a good episode, good interviews for you guys to listen to. Everybody who chimed in, Dick, Matt, Bucket from earlier, Donald on Twitter, everybody, we appreciate you listening. We'll be back next week with more coverage on BroadwaySportsMedia.com, written coverage coming your way the rest of the week. And hey, Ben, before we go out the door, squash whatever that rumor was, right? Just so whoever hears it on the pod. Yeah,
let me pull up his name again. This is how little I had heard about this guy. Colombian midfielder Daniel Giraldo. Rumored earlier today to be joining Nashville SC, 28-year-old midfielder. That is not happening. I can say with definite conviction.
Appreciate it. That's it. So if you didn't see the tweet, now you've heard it on the show. So you see it again on Instagram or whatever. Those things all get churned around. You don't have to pay attention to it. It's not legit. Guys, we will be back next week with more coverage of Nashville Soccer Club, hopefully after not a 0-0 draw. But even if it is, at least they got a point. We'll be back to talk then. Thanks for listening.
Undefeated.
Take care. Still undefeated.
Get it in there.
Never